The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with tension. Leaders of many species sat in silence, their faces hard, their voices low. For weeks they had argued about one subject, one name that kept coming back, one species that most of them had never even seen in their lifetime: humans. To some, the word was a ghost, a story from the past. To others, it was a warning never to be spoken aloud. But today the council wanted action. The speaker, a tall insectoid being, slammed his claw against the table. "They're dangerous," he hissed. "They cannot be allowed to rise again. If humans spread beyond their hidden worlds, they will burn everything in their path." Murmurs of agreement spread across the chamber. Another delegate's scales glistening under the light leaned forward. "Then let us do what we have always done. Place a bounty. If the killers of the galaxy want riches, let them earn it by wiping out humanity once and for all." The idea grew quickly. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, money always spoke louder than fear. A bounty unlike any before was proposed. Enough wealth to buy entire fleets, enough power to make any warlord into a king. The message was clear: hunt humans, kill them, and claim the prize. When the news spread across the stars, excitement followed. Criminal networks lit up, mercenary guilds whispered, and bounty hunters sharpened their blades. For a moment it seemed as if the council had unleashed a storm. But then something strange happened. Days passed, then weeks. Not a single hunter moved. At first the council thought it was delay. Hunters were gathering their weapons, planning their attacks, but soon reports arrived from every corner. The most ruthless killers, the assassins who had taken contracts against entire species, refused this one. In smoky dens and shadowy bars, their answer was the same: no. A veteran warlord, with scars across his face, was asked why. He only laughed bitterly and shook his head. "I've killed kings, I've killed generals, I've destroyed fleets, but I will not touch humans." Another hunter, known for slaughtering colonies in a single night, was offered double the bounty. He refused with a single word: suicide. The council grew confused. Were the hunters suddenly afraid of myths? Humanity had been gone from the galactic stage for centuries. Their worlds were silent, their fleets destroyed in old wars. There was nothing left but ruins. So why did even the boldest criminals tremble at the thought of hunting them? In hidden bars and forgotten stations, whispers spread. They told stories of human soldiers who fought until their last breath, who turned entire battlefields into graves for their enemies. They spoke of human ships that looked fragile but carried firepower strong enough to shatter armadas. They told of colonies on death worlds where humans thrived, where no other species could even breathe. A young mercenary once asked an elder why the killers would not claim the reward. The elder leaned close and whispered words that froze the boy's heart. "Because killers know fear. And every killer in this galaxy fears the same thing. They fear the day they stand against a human." Back in the council chamber, anger replaced confusion. "They are cowards," shouted one delegate. "If they will not take the bounty, then we must force them." But even as they spoke, their voices carried less strength. Some of them began to wonder, if the killers and hunters who lived without fear refused to hunt humans, what did they know that the council did not? The galaxy had seen many wars, many species rise and fall. Empires had burned and rebuilt, but one truth remained. The story about humans ended with destruction, not for the humans, but for their enemies. Even when outnumbered, even when outgunned, the humans found a way to win. Sometimes they fought with fire, sometimes with silence, but always with a strength that others could not understand. As the bounty remained unanswered, a quiet dread began to spread. Smugglers who once laughed at the idea now avoided human space entirely. Pirates erased old star charts that pointed toward Earth. Even the most desperate raiders chose empty trade routes over the risk of crossing human borders. The council sat again, weeks after the bounty was declared. The chamber felt colder. No one wanted to admit it, but the truth was clear. They tried to buy the death of humans with gold and power. And yet, the galaxy's killers, the very ones who lived for blood, had chosen silence instead. One delegate whispered what many were thinking. What if we are not hunting them? What if by placing this bounty, we have called them back? The chamber went still. The first time in many years, leaders of the galaxy felt something they had forgotten. Fear in somewhere far beyond. The council's reach in the quiet black of space. Old signals stirred in the shadowed corners of the galaxy. The bounty had become more than an offer. It had become a curse. The Galactic Council still waited for the first hunter to claim their reward, but nothing came. No mercenary returned with proof. No assassin dared move. And in that silence, something else began to spread stories in the criminal underworld, where smugglers gathered in smoke-filled bars and mercenaries traded scars for credits. Whispers grew louder each night. They were not written in records. They were not spoken in the council's chambers. They lived only in the low voices of killers who had seen too much and survived too long. The first story came from a scarred mercenary named Carvos. He sat in a rusted station bar, staring into a glass of burning liquor. When asked why he refused the bounty, he told them of a battle he had seen long ago. His voice shook as he spoke. It was the Empire of Azareth, he said, 1,000 warships strong. They cornered a human fleet, only 10 ships, fragile and slow. The Azareth laughed. They thought it was already won. He paused, eyes far away. But the humans did not run. Their ships moved as one, and when they struck, it was fire and thunder. 10 human ships tore apart 1,000. The Azareth Empire fell in days. I saw it with my own eyes. Do you think I will chase a species that makes empires vanish? No. The table went silent. None dared mock him. Another story came from a smuggler who had once traded near a human colony. He told of a planet wrapped in storms, where lightning split the skies and beasts larger than ships prowled the ground. No other species could live there, he said. The air was poison, the soil was deadly, but the humans, they built cities. They laughed as storms tried to kill them. I delivered food once. I saw their children play under skies that would melt our skin. If they can thrive there, tell me what could ever kill them? The whispers spread, each tale darker than the last. Assassins who claimed to have seen humans fight spoke of soldiers who never surrendered, even when their bodies were broken. Some said humans had a madness in them, a fire that grew stronger when the battle was lost. They don't fear death. One killer muttered, they use it. In a hidden dockyard, a group of young mercenaries laughed at these tales. To them, humans were only myths told to frighten children. If they were so strong, where are they now? One sneered. But the laughter ended when an old bounty hunter, his armor cracked and faded, stepped into the light. He looked at them. With eyes that had seen too many graves. You ask where they are? He said slowly. I'll tell you where. They are waiting. That is worse than any war. He leaned close, voice dropping to a whisper that froze the room. The bounty will not bring them out. It will bring them back. Fear spread like a shadow. The more the council pushed their reward, the more the underworld pushed back. Prices of weapons rose, not because hunters wanted to fight humans, but because they wanted to defend themselves if humans came. Smugglers refused to travel near human space. Pirates changed routes, even if it meant losing profit. Everyone knew the truth. The killers of the galaxy did not fear the council. They feared the humans, and yet the council continued to mock the silence. In their shining halls, they called the hunters cowards, liars, fools hiding behind ghost stories. But even among them, doubt began to grow. Each delegate had heard the whispers. Each of them wondered what the killers knew that they did not. One night, on a forgotten asteroid station, a deal was struck between 2 assassins. Both were legends. Both had killed rulers and generals. They were offered enough wealth to live as kings if they took the human contract. They met in secret, away from listening ears.
Yes.
One assassin placed his blade on the table and said, "We could take the job. We could claim the reward." The other shook his head slowly. "And when the humans find us? When they burn our worlds and our names are ash, no gold will save us." Neither spoke again. I left the table, the contract. Untouched, the whispers became heavier, darker, as if the galaxy itself was warning those who listened. In every tale, the humans were not prey. They were storms, shadows, fire that burned brighter the more you tried to put it out. No one could prove these stories were true. Yet no one dared doubt them, and so the bounty hung like a curse across the stars, unclaimed, untouched, but always present. The council called it power, the killers called it death. And in the quiet places of the galaxy, a new fear grew. What if the humans heard the whispers too? The bounty was still unclaimed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still the hunters of the galaxy refused to move. The council grew restless. They called the killers cowards, they mocked the whispers, and they demanded proof that humans were not the monsters of legend. But not everyone shared that fear. Somewhere in the black corners of space, there were always the desperate ones who needed credits more than they needed their lives. They were not the great assassins, or the infamous mercenaries. They were scavengers, raiders, hunters with little honor and even less patience. To them, the bounty was too large to resist. One crew in particular, the Valor Syndicate, decided to make history. They were known for ambushing trade convoys, stealing from the weak, and selling slaves to the highest bidder. Their leader, Drax, was no legend, but he was greedy, and greed made him blind. "The galaxy is trembling at a ghost," he told his crew. "If the old hunters are too afraid, then we will be the ones to collect the prize. One human ship, one human world, that is all we need. Then we will be rich beyond measure." The others laughed and cheered. They had no respect for whispers. They believed humans were broken, a forgotten people hiding among ruins. To them, this was the easiest bounty they would ever claim. And so, the Valor Syndicate hunted. They searched the edges of forgotten space, tracing old star maps where human colonies once stood. Most were dead rocks, burned worlds, ruins without life. But then, luck or fate delivered them a target. Signal, weak and broken, coming from a drifting colony ship. It was human. The hunters gathered in their warship's command deck, eyes shining with greed. The ship was old, damaged, slow. Its engines flickered like dying stars. There were no weapons on its hull, no escorts in sight. To the hunters, it looked like prey already wounded. Drax smiled, teeth sharp under the dim light. "This is it. The first human kill. The council will pay us in gold, and the galaxy will remember our names." They approached with their weapons armed, preparing to board. Some even laughed, imagining frightened humans begging for their lives. But then, the silence came. No distress call, no cries for mercy. The human ship did not flee, did not power its weapons, did not even change course. It simply floated, quiet and still, as if waiting. The raiders grew uneasy, though they would not admit it. Drax ordered the boarding teams to launch. They crossed the void in small shuttles and cut into the hull of the human ship. Opened with a hiss, darkness greeted them. The ship's corridors were empty, cold, silent. At first they thought it was abandoned. No crew, no defenses, just a ghost ship drifting in the dark. But as they explored deeper, something changed. Doors sealed behind them. Lights flickered on, one by one, leading them through the halls. It was as if the ship itself was watching. A scream echoed through the coms. Then another. Gunfire erupted in the distance. The raiders demanded answers, but only silence followed. One by one, their signals vanished. On the warship, the crew listened in horror. Their comrades had gone inside and never returned. Drax roared in rage, ordering more to enter, but none dared move. Fear spread among them like poison. The human ship remained still, quiet, patient. Then its engines flared to life. The hunters panicked. They fired their weapons, but the human ship's shields bloomed with strange light. The blasts did nothing. In a single moment, the weak colony ship turned its guns outward. Beams of fire tore through the Syndicate's warship as if it were paper. The crew screamed as explosions shook the hull. When the smoke cleared, the Valor Syndicate was gone. Only silence remained in that forgotten corner of space. Days later, a patrol ship discovered something drifting among the stars. Syndicate's vessel, its engines dead, its weapons cold. The ship was intact but empty. Not a single soul remained aboard. No bodies, no blood, no trace of life. The council received the report. They studied it in secret, trying to explain the impossible, but no answer came, and then the rumors began again. Whispers spread that the humans had taken the hunters, said they were killed. Others claimed they were captured. But the most terrifying rumor of all was that the hunters had been given a choice and chosen silence forever. In the underworld, the story spread like fire. The bounty was no longer seen as an opportunity, it was a death sentence. Those who tried to claim it did not return. Their ships drifted back like ghosts, empty and cursed, and so the fear grew. If even the desperate hunters vanished without a trace, what hope did anyone else have? The killers of the galaxy made their choice. They would not hunt humans, not for all the gold and the stars, and far away deep in the dark. The human ship kept moving, silent, watching, waiting. The council chamber was never meant for fear. It was a place of power, a hall where voices rose in command and empires obeyed. But now the walls carried a different sound, whispers, doubts, and the heavy silence of leaders who no longer believed in their own decisions. Reports lay across the great table, pages filled with confusion, images of empty ships drifting in space, records of hunters who vanished without a trace. The latest report was the worst, the Valor Syndicate. A group notorious for their brutality had disappeared after chasing a single human vessel. Their warship had been found, intact, but abandoned. It's not a body, not a scream, not even the trace of a struggle, just emptiness. The delegates argued, their voices sharp but trembling. It was sabotage, one insisted. Syndicate betrayed itself. Perhaps mutiny. Another shook his head. A mutiny erases every life from a ship. Without leaving a trace, something happened, something we cannot explain. The insectoid speaker who had first called for the bounty slammed his claw against the desk. We cannot give in to superstition. These are lies spread by criminals who fear shadows. His words carried strength, but his eyes betrayed him. Even he had heard the whispers. Outside the chamber, the underworld was drowning in those whispers. Assassins refused to take the bounty. Mercenaries vanished into hiding. Pirates erased human roots from their maps. Reason. No one returned from hunting humans. The silence was more terrifying than any warning. The council demanded answers. They summoned smugglers, mercenaries, warlords, anyone who had touched human space. But each interrogation ended the same way. The criminals lowered their eyes, voices thin with fear, and said the same words, "We do not hunt humans." One smuggler, trembling under the council's questioning, tried to explain. "You think humans are prey? They are not. They're hunters. The moment you chase them, you are already caught." His voice cracked before he begged to be released. He was dragged away, but his words stayed in the chamber like a shadow that would not leave. Days turned into sleepless nights. Delegates whispered in secret halls, asking questions they would never ask aloud. Why had every bounty before this been taken so quickly, so icily, but not this one? Why did killers who feared nothing fear only humans? The bounty itself had been a mistake. By placing a price on human lives, had they called attention to something that was better left forgotten? Perhaps humans would have stayed silent, hidden in their small worlds, if not for the council's arrogance. Now maybe the bounty had awoken them. The fear spread like a slow poison. Entire systems near the old human territories reported strange sightings, faint signals on scanners, shadows that looked like ships but vanished when approached. No one could prove it, but the timing was too perfect. It was as if the humans were watching, waiting for the council to make another mistake. Leaders tried to silence the panic. They ordered propaganda broadcasts, declaring the bounty a simple matter of time. They told their people the hunters would return victorious, that humans were weak and broken, that nothing had changed. But their words lacked weight, and their people saw the truth. If the killers of the galaxy refused the bounty, how could any lie erase that fear? The council met again, but this time the chamber felt colder, darker. Their voices no longer carried pride. They carried desperation. One delegate whispered, "Perhaps we should cancel the bounty. Pretend it never existed." Another hissed, "Back. Do you think that will stop them?" If the humans know they are truly out there, then it is already too late. Arguments broke out, louder, harsher, until the insectoid speaker shouted for silence. "We are the council. We do not bow to ghosts." His words echoed, but not one voice rose to support him. The silence that followed was more powerful than any roar. For the first time in centuries, the council did not feel like rulers of the galaxy. They felt like prey. And prey always fears the hunter they cannot see. That night, as the delegates left the chamber, each of them looked to the stars with unease. Somewhere out there, beyond their sight, was a question none of them could answer. Were the humans gone forever? Or had the bounty already called them back? The thought spread like a shadow over their dreams. If humans were returning, then no. Fleet, no army, no empire could save them. And in the silence of deep space, as the council tried to calm their fear, a single human warship drifted at the edge of a system, silent, waiting. The stars above the council's worlds had always felt safe. For centuries, their fleets had ruled the space lanes. Their empires stretched across sectors, and their power was unquestioned. But now every captain, every patrol, every scout looked into the dark with unease. Too many whispers had spread.
Ow.
Too many hunters had vanished. The silence of the bounty was heavier than any war. And then one night, the silence broke. It began at the edge of a forgotten system, a quiet place where no major trade route passed. A small patrol fleet picked up a signal. At first, it seemed like nothing, an old transponder code, weak and flickering, almost lost in the static. But when the data was cleared, the officers froze. The signal was human. The commander of the patrol ship tried to dismiss it. "It is impossible. Humans are gone. It must be a trick," an echo from the past. But the signal grew stronger, and their sensors caught sight of something massive emerging from the void. A shape, silent and dark, cutting through space like a shadow given form. The crew held their breath as it appeared. It was a ship, old but alive, larger than any they had seen in years. The hull bore scars of ancient battles, blackened plates, welded over deeper wounds, yet it moved with purpose, as if it had never stopped hunting. The name on its side was worn and broken, but one word could still be read. Human panic spread through the patrol fleet. Weapons were armed, warnings were sent, calls rushed back to the council, but the human ship did not attack. It did not fire. It only drifted closer, its lights cold and unblinking, like the eyes of a predator studying its prey. For hours, the patrol fleet held their position, guns trembling in their mounts. Some captains wanted to fire first to prove their strength. Others begged to retreat, knowing strength meant nothing if the stories were true. In the end, they did nothing. The human ship simply passed through them, ignoring their presence as if they were too small to matter. But its silence was louder than any battle. The news spread faster than light. The bounty hunters had failed. The whispers had been right. Humanity was not gone. They had returned. The council gathered in panic. Reports filled the chamber, sightings of strange signals. Ghost ships appearing on the edges of systems, colonies claiming to hear voices in old human codes. But the clearest, undeniable truth was this one human warship had entered their space, and no one had dared stop it. Some delegates screamed for war, "Destroy it now," before it gathers others. But their voices were weak, drowned by the fear that filled the chamber. If one ship could terrify fleets into silence, what would happen if more followed? The insectoid speaker tried to restore order. "It is only one ship. We can crush it easily." Yet even as he spoke, his claws tapped the table nervously. He had heard the same stories, and so had everyone else. In the underworld, the reaction was worse. Smugglers abandoned routes near the human siding. Pirates changed sectors overnight. Mercenary guilds burned their contracts. The killers who once ruled the galaxy moved like frightened prey, whispering that the humans were awake again. On a distant station, an old assassin told the story to a crowd of terrified recruits. "I warned you," he said softly. The bounty was a call, and now they have answered. Back at the edge of the system, the patrol fleet still watched the human warship. It never attacked, it never fled. It only remained, its presence a message without words. The crew began to feel it, though. None could explain it. The ship was not waiting for them. It was waiting for something else. And then the strangest part. The ship transmitted a single signal, not a threat, not an attack command. Just one short burst of data sent into the void, a message in a code older than the Council itself. No one could translate it fully, but every expert agreed on one thing: it was not a distress call. It was a beacon. The Council trembled as they heard this. If it was a beacon, then the warship was not alone. It was calling others. That night, across 100 worlds, fear took root like never before. The bounty had started as a show of power. Now it felt like a death sentence. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy looked up at the stars and wondered if the hunters had returned to claim their prey. And in the cold dark of space, the human warship waited, its silent engines glowing faintly, like the first spark of a fire about to consume everything. The human warship lingered at the edge of Council space, silent and watchful. Its presence alone had shaken fleets and frightened empires, yet it had fired no shot. For weeks it remained there, unmoving, as if studying the galaxy that had once tried to erase its kind. Some thought it was a warning, others believed it was only the beginning. Inside the Council chamber, fear and pride fought for control. Many delegates wanted to send fleets to destroy the ship before others arrived. Others urged caution, whispering that to attack a human vessel was to invite death. The arguments grew louder each day until greed finally tipped the balance. A group of powerful council members, unwilling to appear weak, made a decision in secret. They would not wait. They would hire assassins and mercenaries to destroy the human warship quietly. If they succeeded, the galaxy would believe humans were no threat. If they failed, they did not plan to admit the attempt at all. In the dark corners of space, promises of gold and power were whispered once more. This time, enough fortune was offered to tempt even the most careful killers. A coalition was formed: raiders, mercenaries, and warlords joined together in an alliance of greed. They prepared an ambush in silence, gathering ships in hidden sectors until a small fleet was ready. When the day came, they moved with confidence. The human ship still drifted alone, its beacon pulsing faintly into the void. It did not run, it did not hide, it seemed unaware of the trap closing around it. The alliance surrounded the vessel, dozens of warships against one. Drax's old rivals were among them, smiling at the thought of finishing what others had failed to do. The council members who had arranged the attack waited eagerly for news. They wanted proof that the humans were myths, that the bounty had been right all along. But what came was not victory. The first strike was sudden. Energy beams lit the dark as the mercenary fleet opened fire from all sides. Explosions filled the void, and for a heartbeat, it looked as if the human vessel was consumed in fire. The mercenaries cheered, believing the ship was gone. But when the flames cleared, their smiles froze. The human warship still stood. Its hull glowed faintly, shields shimmering with strange light that bent their attacks away. Slowly, its weapons came alive, massive cannons that had slept for centuries now burned with renewed fury. The counterattack was merciless. In moments, entire warships were torn apart. A single beam of white fire split through two cruisers at once. Missiles erupted like storms, tearing through shields as if they were nothing. The hunters tried to flee, but the human ship moved faster than they thought possible, cutting them down as they scattered. The battle lasted only minutes. Dozens of ships reduced to wreckage, their crews silenced. The alliance that had sworn to end the humans had been erased as if it never existed. Only a handful of vessels survived long enough to send desperate calls for help before they too were swallowed by fire, and then the warship spoke. For the first time since its return, its voice reached the galaxy. A transmission spread across the system, cold and steady, spoken in a language that every translator could understand. This was your first mistake. It will also be your last. Hunt us again, and there will be no council left to remember your crimes." The message ended. No more words followed. The ship drifted back into silence, its guns cooling, its beacon pulsing once more. Panic exploded. Through the council, Secret Alliance had been destroyed, and the humans had exposed their treachery with a single warning. The delegates shouted at one another, accusing, denying, demanding answers. But none of their words mattered. Everyone had heard the transmission. Ow! Everyone now knew the truth. The humans were not prey. They were hunters who had allowed the galaxy to live out of choice, not weakness. The bounty had been a challenge, and the response had come. The killers had been right to refuse. In the underworld, the reaction was immediate. Disbanded overnight. Assassins who once bragged about killing kings now swore never to even speak the word human. Pirates destroyed maps that showed routes near human space. Fear spread faster than fire, leaving only silence in its place. The galaxy had learned the price of its arrogance. One human warship had destroyed an entire alliance. If there were more ships out there hidden and waiting, then no empire could stand against them, and yet the council could not undo their mistake. The bounty still existed, written into law and broadcast to the stars. And as long as it remained, the humans would see it as a threat. The delegates sat in silence that night, their voices gone, their pride broken. They had tried to end the humans. Instead, they had called them back. And now the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would come next. The council chamber was silent. The last transmission from the human warship still echoed in their minds. Every delegate had heard the cold voice that promised destruction if they tried again. For the first time in centuries, the mighty rulers of the galaxy had no words. Pride had vanished. Fear had taken its place. Outside the chamber, news spread like fire. Every planet, every colony, every guild whispered the same thing. The humans had spoken. Not in anger, not in rage, but in calm warning. Their message was worse than any roar. It was the sound of hunters waiting in the dark, giving their prey one final chance to run. Some wanted to surrender at once. They said the bounty should be erased, the law should be undone, and a message of peace should be sent before it was too late. Others refused, saying to beg for mercy would show weakness, and weakness was death. Arguments broke out, sharper than ever, and suspicion poisoned the air. Every delegate feared the others might betray them to the humans. Meanwhile, the underworld grew restless. Mercenaries who survived the failed alliance told stories of the battle. They described how the human ship had moved, how its weapons had cut through fleets as if the ships were made of paper. They spoke of shields that bent light, of missiles that hunted faster than thought, of a ship that seemed alive. Many refused to tell their stories twice. They feared that even speaking of the humans too much might draw their gaze. On a distant colony, a group of miners huddled around a screen, replaying the message over and over. "Hunt us again, and there will be no council left." The words had spread everywhere, across open channels, across private bands, across the deepest parts of the network. The humans had not only spoken to the council, they had spoken to everyone. Whispers began. One human ship could do this. How many more existed? Were they already hidden in the dark? Had the humans returned not with one ship, but with a fleet? The galaxy's rulers had no answers. The fear of the unknown was worse than any weapon. Back in council space, a small meeting was held in secret. Only the most powerful rulers were invited. They spoke in low voices, afraid even the walls might be listening. "We cannot allow this," one hissed. "If humans return, everything we built will be ashes." Another shook his head. "If we move against them again, everything will be ashes anyway." You saw what one ship did. For hours they debated, until one plan began to take shape. They would not erase the bounty. It was too late for that. Instead, they would change it. Quietly, without announcement, they would twist the law to declare that humans must not be hunted, but feared. They would tell the galaxy that humans were cursed prey, untouchable, that those who went after them would bring ruin upon themselves. It was not an apology, not mercy, but a desperate attempt to protect themselves without admitting defeat. But even as they planned, the human ship moved again. For weeks, it had lingered at the edge of space, silent and patient. It began to drift forward, deeper into the systems of the Council. It did not rush, it did not hide. It simply moved, steady as a blade drawn from its sheath. The Council ordered fleets to shadow it, but none dared engage. Soldiers stared at the great black vessel from a distance, their hands trembling on their weapons, knowing a single mistake could be the end of them all. Commanders ordered them to fire, but no one obeyed. The human warning was burned into their minds. On one world, people cheered. On another, they wept. Across the stars, millions began to question why the bounty was ever written in the first place. Why had the Council feared humans so much? What truth had been hidden long ago? Questions spread like disease, and with them came rebellion. Colonies spoke of breaking away, of making their own peace with the humans before it was too late. The human ship gave no answer. It spoke no more words. It only kept moving, as if measuring the galaxy's fear. Every day it drew closer to the heart of the Council, closer to the world where the law was first written. Closer to the ones who had placed the bounty. By then, even the most arrogant leaders understood the truth. The humans had not come to beg. They had not come to demand. They had come to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten, that there was a price for calling humans prey. The warning had been given. What came next would not be a warning. It would be judgment. The Council's homeworld had never known fear. For thousands of years, its towers of glass and steel stood as symbols of power. Fleets gathered in its orbit, banners of countless species flew in the winds, and its leaders ruled with absolute control. But on this day, the sky above was silent. The fleets stayed back, afraid to move too close. The banners hung limp. The city waited, high above the planet. The human warship arrived. It drifted into orbit like a shadow falling across a torch. Its black hull reflected nothing, absorbing the light of the sun, its edges sharp against the stars. No other vessel dared block its path. Entire armadas gave way, retreating like prey from a predator they no longer wished to challenge. Inside the Council chamber, panic rippled through the delegates. They argued, shouted, demanded answers from one another. "Send a message," one cried. "We must show respect. We must apologize." Another slammed his fist. "Apology will not save us. They have come to finish what they started." The human ship did not send words. It sent silence. And that silence pressed on every mind, like a heavy stone. Then the first signal came. Simple broadcast, clear and cold, heard across the galaxy. This is judgment. Every screen flickered, every comm channel filled with the image of the warship. Its presence stretched across thousands of systems. No one could look away. On distant colonies, children clung to their parents. Soldiers gripped their weapons, but did not fire. Pirates, killers, and mercenaries, all who once dreamed of claiming the bounty, fell into silence. The ship moved. Its weapons lit up the void, beams of impossible light cutting across orbit. The Council's defensive platforms exploded one after another, shattered like glass in a storm. No fleet dared intervene. They only watched. Cities below trembled as the planet's shield flickered and broke. Towers fell, fire spread across the surface, and the screams of the rulers who had written the bounty echoed louder than ever. The galaxy's great capital, the heart of the law, was being unmade, and yet the human ship was precise. It did not strike at civilians. It did not burn everything in its path. It destroyed the war machines, the command centers, the bunkers of power. It cut out the core of tyranny, piece by piece, while leaving the rest untouched. To the galaxy, the message was clear. This was not revenge against the innocent. This was punishment for those who had dared mark humans as prey in the chamber. The last leaders begged. They sent pleas across every channel. "Stop. We end the bounty. We swear it. We declare humans untouchable. Sacred pleas. Enough." But no reply came. Only fire. When the dust cleared, the Council chambers were nothing but ruins. The great towers of rule had collapsed, the leaders crushed beneath their own walls. The bounty that once stretched across the galaxy was gone, not because it was erased, but because those who had written it no longer existed. For 3 days, the human warship hovered in orbit, silent and still. Across the stars, no one dared move against it. Worlds whispered that the humans would now turn their wrath on everyone, that this was only the beginning of a war without end. Others whispered the opposite, that the humans had given their warning, delivered judgment, and would now vanish again into the dark. On the 4th day, the ship moved. Slowly, without a word, it left orbit. Fleets tracked it, but did not follow. It vanished beyond the edge of known space, into the black where no empire ruled. The galaxy was left in silence. The bounty was no more. The rulers were gone. And a new fear settled over every species, not the fear of hunting humans, the fear of being hunted by them. Children grew up hearing the story of Judgment Day. Pirates told it in whispers before dark. Soldiers carried it in their eyes when they looked at the stars. A single human warship had brought down the mightiest government the galaxy had ever known. And the question that echoed in every heart was the same, was that the only ship? Were there more waiting in the dark, ready to return, when the galaxy forgot the warning? No one knew the answer. And that was the true weapon the humans had left. But their shadow remained.